After discovering my wife was having an affair with her boss, I had a cake delivered to her office, decorated with a photo of the two of them together. The moment I found out my wife had been sneaking around with her boss, I decided I wasn't just going to sit there and take it. I wanted her to feel even a fraction of the humiliation I was feeling. So, I had a cake delivered straight to her office, decorated with a picture of the two of them all cozy together. It was petty, but at that moment, I did not care. I had tried posting about this whole mess on an infidelity support forum, but their bot flagged it. Guess I was too much for them. Now, I am here, just looking for some perspective on where the hell I go from here. I am 32 years old, and I have been married to my wife, who is 30, for 5 years. Up until about a year ago, things seemed fine, but lately, she feels like a total stranger. When we first met, we were both doing well for ourselves, both working solid jobs, and I thought we had the same outlook on life. I took the trade school route and worked my way up in the coding world, proving myself through hard work rather than a fancy degree. I built my reputation from the ground up, and at this point, my experience and references mean more than a piece of paper ever could. My wife, on the other hand, went all the way through school, got a graduate degree, and landed herself a management role. In the beginning, this was just a funny contrast between us. She would tease me about my opinions on middle managers, and I would complain about how they slowed everything down, making things harder for people actually getting the work done. She, of course, saw them as the glue holding everything together. The thing is, I had my fair share of bad managers, the ones who saw developers like me as interchangeable parts. They would set insane deadlines, make promises to clients they had no business making, and pile on extra work at the last minute. Whenever I would vent about it, she always took their side. The kicker? She never even met my boss. He sees things you don't, she would say. After about a year of dating, I learned my lesson. I stopped talking to her about work unless it was about a raise or time off. I could tell she never really respected my career path. She pushed me to go back to school early on, but once I laid out just how deep in debt that would put me, she let it go. When we got married, neither of us had any debt. We were making about the same, and financially, we were solid. That changed 2 years ago. I landed a new job at a company where the owner actually took time to talk to me. He saw potential in me, and now I make 50% more than my wife. My manager is the kind of guy who knows how to let people do their jobs without micromanaging. He is not a technical lead, but he understands his role, and we work well together. The first few years of marriage were great. We had fun, went on regular date nights, shared hobbies, cooked together, read, watched movies, you name it. I never brought up work drama, and she stopped nagging me about getting another degree. It felt like we had a good balance. Then the pandemic hit. We both started working from home, which should have been fine. Our house is plenty big, with extra bedrooms that we always figured would be for kids someday. One was already my home office, and we converted another for her when everything shut down. I took working from home seriously. Every morning, I got up, made breakfast, showered, shaved, and even put on a suit before heading into my office. Do not get me wrong, I hate wearing suits, but it put me in the mindset to get things done. My wife? Not so much. She would roll out of bed, eat breakfast, brush her teeth, throw on sweatpants and a t-shirt, and head straight to her office, where she spent half the day playing Candy Crush between emails. I figured, whatever. We just had different work styles. But then something changed. Even though we were in the same house all day, we started feeling more distant. She had meetings constantly, and since she kept her office door open, I could hear everything. I had one quick meeting a day and always closed my door for it. Apparently, that was a problem. 5 months ago, she told me she was offended that I closed my door for my daily meeting. I told her it helped me focus. She said it felt like I was hiding something. I tried to keep up with our usual hobbies, but she brushed me off. We see each other all day anyway, she said. I should have pushed back, but I figured things would go back to normal. Maybe that was my mistake. Then her company started bringing people back into the office part-time. She could not sign up fast enough. I get it, working from home has its downsides, but my company had no reason to rush reopening, so I stayed remote. That is when everything really started going downhill. She started hanging out with coworkers after work, staying late to have drinks at someone's place. Whenever I asked about it, she got defensive, like I was prying into something I had no right to ask about. She was pulling away from me, little by little, and I could feel it. At some point, she stopped feeling like my wife and more like a roommate who barely acknowledged me. Then, last month, she handed me her old iPad one weekend and asked me to wipe it. She wanted to give it to her niece. I have done this sort of thing 100 times for family, so I did not think anything of it. She left for yet another company gathering, and I powered it on. Maybe she thought I would just reset it without checking. Maybe she had gotten sloppy. But I checked. And I found it. Her messages. Photos. Videos. Conversations with her boss. They had been sleeping together for 2 months. It felt like my blood turned to ice. My entire body went numb, like I was walking through a dream. I backed everything up to a cloud drive I use for my projects separate from work, then I started looking for a lawyer. I did not say a word to her. Not yet. By then, our marriage was already dead. We had not been intimate in months. It was like I had been living with a stranger. I reached out to an attorney, and he told me to keep quiet. Keep gathering evidence. Hire a private investigator. He even recommended one. So for the last month, that is what I did. We built a solid case. The lawyer was preparing divorce papers, and I had all the proof I needed. Be patient, he told me. I was. Until last night. My lawyer had just told me everything was set. I could have played it smart. I could have just let the legal process play out. But something inside me snapped. She came home late, as usual. I do not even remember what she said. But I lost it. I hope it was worth it. With your boss. She did not even flinch. Instead, she turned nasty. She called me emotionally absent. Said I just lounged around all day, even though I was the one earning most of the income. Said I was not intellectually stimulating enough for her, even though my job is highly technical. I told her I had a lawyer. She laughed. Your bluff is pathetic. You are not leaving me. Even if you file for divorce, I will take half your paycheck. If you stay, at least you will still get sex once in a while. So do not mess this up. She was a completely different person. And that was the moment I decided she was going to get served with a cake. She smirked at me like I was the dumbest man on earth. I told her, that is not a marriage. She chuckled again, shaking her head like I just did not get it. Honey, it is the 21st century. A woman can have her cake and eat it too. She laughed one more time, then went to bed like nothing had happened, like she had not just torched everything we had built together. I sat there, staring at the wall, my hands clenched into fists, my pulse pounding in my ears. Something inside me shifted. I grabbed my phone and sent my boss an email. I need a week off to handle a family issue. He approved it immediately. I crashed on the couch in my home office that night, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing, fire burning through my veins. Morning came. She barely acknowledged me as she got ready for work, pausing only long enough to say, "Do not wait up." Like she had not detonated our life the night before. That was it. I grabbed my keys and drove straight to my lawyer's office. He had the papers ready. The process server was there, waiting, and my lawyer asked me how I wanted them served. I leaned back in my chair, exhaled, and told him my plan. My lawyer chuckled, shaking his head. You better not. I have had plenty of people want to serve papers with a little flair, but judges do not have a sense of humor. He warned me that this could affect alimony, assets, things I should care about. But I did not care. Not one bit. Her words were still burning inside me. I wanted her to burn too. My lawyer sighed, tried one last time to talk me out of it, but when he saw I was dead set, he gave up. The process server? He thought it was hilarious. "You are my hero," he said, grinning as he heard the plan. I had to special order something on rush delivery. The process server picked it up and took it straight to my wife's office. A few hours later, I got the full report. He walked in, carrying a large box and the divorce papers, and found my wife chatting and laughing with a group of co-workers. He called her name, and she confirmed it, then asked what was going on. He placed the box on a nearby desk, opened it, and stepped back. Inside was a cake. A beautifully decorated, custom-made cake. With an image printed in edible frosting, her and her boss, tangled up together, way too cozy to be innocent. They were clothed, but the implication was crystal clear. Above it, in perfect icing, the words, "Here is your cake. Eat it." He set the divorce papers beside the cake, looked her straight in the eye, and said, "You have been served." The entire office went silent for about half a second before my wife let out an ear-piercing screech. She lunged forward, smacking the cake off the table. It splattered onto the carpet, but the image was still visible, right there for everyone to see. At least 8 people saw it. Her boss, standing there, looking like he had just seen a ghost. Her so-called friends, gasping, some backing away like she was contagious. Then, chaos. Some of her co-workers started laying into her, berating her for what she had done. She shrieked back at them, on the verge of a meltdown. The process server took one last look, decided he had seen enough, and made a quick exit. My phone started blowing up almost immediately. Calls. Messages. I ignored every single one. Then her mother texted me, saying my wife was staying at her place for now. The high from the revenge lasted a few hours, but as the day went on, I found myself thinking about my lawyer's warning. Had I gone too far? Had I just made things harder for myself? Had I just maybe screwed this up? Update 1. The response I have gotten in the last week has been overwhelming. I was only supposed to take 1 week off work, but my boss, being the solid guy he is, extended it to 2. The first thing I did was get my financials in order. I split our savings, put my half into a separate account, and handled all the mortgage auto payments and credit freezes like my lawyer advised. Thankfully, we do not have kids. That makes this whole mess slightly easier to untangle. The second thing I did was start therapy. I found someone who specializes in helping people deal with infidelity. I have had 2 sessions so far, and while I am still feeling a bit off, my emotions are not swinging as wildly anymore. I know one thing for sure: I am done making reckless decisions. After the cake stunt, I told my lawyer I would follow his advice from now on. He gave me a simple truth to chew on: you can be happy, or you can be right. And I get it now. Legally, my wife has the right to return home. I cannot stop her, but my lawyer told me to document every single interaction. If she tries to move back in, I need to keep my phone recording at all times. So far, she is still at her mom's place. But she wants to talk. She emailed me, saying she wanted to come by on Saturday. My lawyer said I could, but his strong recommendation was that any conversation happen at his office with both our attorneys present. I passed that message along. She responded that she does not have a lawyer. My lawyer told me that if she insisted on talking at home, I needed witnesses and to record the entire thing. So I set the terms. 2 mutual friends would be there, and we would all have our phones on the table, recording. She agreed. Saturday came, and she walked in, hesitated, then awkwardly tried to hug me. I put my hand up and stepped back. The phone started recording. She sat down, looking guilty. Looking ashamed. She said she felt like she had been watching her life like a movie instead of living it. That it had been a thrill, a rush. Then she asked, "Do you even want to know why?" I told her, I really do not care anymore. But she told me anyway. She said that when she went back to the office, she got close to 3 female co-workers, 2 of them divorced. They got into her head. They kept telling her she was settling. That she deserved more. That she should not have to put up with a husband who worked from home while she was out hustling. One of them took it a step further. The ringleaders psychoanalyzed me from my wife's stories, twisting everything into some absurd narrative. That I was threatened by educated people. That I was a submissive man who needed a real leader in my life. That if my wife cheated, I would just get angry, yell a little, then fall back in line. Her boss fit the mold they planted in her head. A man in charge. A man who gave orders. And she fell for it. She still has her job, for now, but barely. When the cake was served, her boss immediately cut ties, told her they would only communicate through email, and that if she ever entered his office alone, he would call another coworker in as a witness. Her so-called friends? The moment she was exposed, they turned on her, humiliating her in front of everyone. And to top it all off, they are now blackmailing her. They want $5,000 to keep their mouths shut, or they are taking everything to human resources. She begged me for advice. I told her, there is no going back to normal after this. Everything changes now. If she pays them, they will come for more. If she bends, they will squeeze harder. The only way out is for her to get ahead of it, report herself, her boss, and those backstabbing friends. She hesitated. Then, finally, she asked, "What about us?" I did not even flinch. There is no us. I told her to get a lawyer. She pointed at the cake situation, like it was some kind of defense. I just shrugged. Yeah. And I am seeing a therapist for that. She left soon after. Now, I am just waiting to see if she takes my advice or if she gives in to the blackmail. And honestly, why is it always the co-workers? I was driving through the countryside last weekend, just trying to clear my head, when I spotted a small dog breeder's sign. Figured I had nothing better to do, so I pulled over out of curiosity. The guy running it was a quiet, older man, and he had a breed of dogs I had never seen before. He told me they were Jindos, a rare breed from Korea, loyal, smart, and fiercely independent. He spoke about them like they were warriors or something. I played with a few of them, and for the first time in weeks, I actually felt something other than anger or exhaustion. I am seriously thinking about going back to buy one, even though they are not cheap. My wife used to talk about getting a dog, but she never settled on a breed she liked. Funny how I am the one considering it now. Anyway, she still has not tried to move back in. No late night "I miss you" messages. No attempts to talk beyond the last disaster of a conversation. But she did finally get a lawyer. Mine called me, and the first thing out of his mouth was, "Buckle up. You are going to marriage counseling." I told him that was not happening. I was done. He agreed, but then he sighed and said, "Normally, I would tell the other attorney to go to hell, but right now, I need to make you look like the reasonable one. So, you have to play nice and entertain these kinds of requests. This is why you listen to your attorney." If I had just kept my emotions in check, I would not be stuck dealing with this nonsense. He gave me clear instructions for the session. Do not admit fault. Do not concede that I failed anywhere. Do not agree to anything, not even a second session. Just attend, answer questions neutrally, and stick to the facts. No yelling. No accusing. No giving them an inch. So that is how I found myself sitting through a Zoom therapy session with my soon-to-be ex-wife and some stranger who was supposed to mediate things. Me, sitting in my home office. Her, at her mother's place. The counselor, sitting in what looked like an overly sterile office space. It was about as ridiculous as it sounds. From the second the call started, I knew exactly how this was going to go. The counselor was all about balance. Surely you can see how distance could create a need. I just stared at the screen and said, "I do not agree. It takes two people to create a rift in a marriage." Yeah. Her and her boss. Holding on to this anger is keeping you trapped in the past. You have to look toward a brighter future. Funny. Because past behavior is usually a pretty good indicator of future behavior. They threw out every cliché in the book. I did not argue. I did not fight. I did not take the bait. I just sat there, stone-faced, answering only what I had to. 2 hours of my wife and this counselor trying to make me take even 10% of the blame, just enough so she could twist it into C? We were both at fault. We can fix this. Near the end of the session, the counselor turned to me and asked, "Why are you being so cold?" I leaned forward, rested my elbows on the desk, and said, "Did you know infidelity can cause the same kind of psychological trauma as post-traumatic stress disorder?" The counselor blinked. I think I have heard something like that before. Time was almost up. I was about to sign off when my wife spoke up. "Would you be open to another session next weekend?" I did not even hesitate. "I do not think that is a good idea." Then she begged, "What would it take for you to agree to another session?" I sighed. "Good night." And I ended the call. Now I am just waiting to see what the next reasonable request is that I have to go along with. Because at this point, my lawyer is painting a picture for the courts. A well-adjusted man who had one outburst of bad judgment versus a vindictive, manipulative woman who burned her marriage to the ground.